Everybody, welcome to the Give Them Glitter podcast. My name is Joshua, and I'm joined by my wife, Leslie.
Hello.
And this is the first episode. We're finally doing it.
Finally. It's been like years in the making.
It has like 18 to 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, not 18 years.
Oh, I was like
18 months to 2 years. All right, off to a great start.
Yeah.
18 months. Yeah.
2 years.
2 years. A lot of thoughts. A lot of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of life happened that kind of put this off.
Yep.
But definitely wiser now than when we thought we were going to start the podcast. But nonetheless, still have the same passion for this project. And so episode 1, we wanted to share a little bit with you why the name Give Them Glitter. What's the meaning behind the name? What's the motivation behind the podcast? What is our why? Why do we think that the world needs another podcast? And why do we think this can be valuable? So it really started with you and our youngest,
yep.
A little interaction that you had, and then a follow-up conversation that you and I had that kind of sparked this conversation and sparked the idea of the podcast. So why don't you share that with everyone?
Right. So this was a couple years ago, so I don't have every detail anymore ingrained in my mind. But I remember I was interacting with our youngest son. We have 2 sons. And he wanted glitter for something. And I just remember having this thought that, you know, a lot of people would have issue with a boy playing with glitter.
Yep.
And I just was like, why? Why would most people have a problem with glitter, or, you know, a boy playing with nail polish or lipstick or whatever the case may be, anything feminine. And I just thought, just give them the glitter. Like, what does it matter? Every kid likes sparkly, shiny things, regardless of their gender identity. Just give them the glitter.
Give them the glitter.
And so I later told you about this thought process I had, and we unpacked it a million different ways.
Yep, that's true.
and still unpack it to this day.
Almost.
And then you had the idea to turn it into a podcast, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
That's how this was.
Yeah, so he asked for glitter,
Mm-hmm.
and you gave it to him,
Mm-hmm.
turned into it. And it really fit into a lot of the more broader conversations we were having at that time, not just between us, but also between our friends,
Mm-hmm.
about just the idea of allowing boys specifically
Mm-hmm.
to express femininity. And we'll talk a little more about that later on, but
Yeah.
kind of just creating a safe space for them to be themselves, to be the type of parents that promote that within them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that idea behind just give your kid the glitter.
Yeah.
Just let them be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Let them play with the glitter. Let them have fun, and be themselves.
Yeah.
You know.
And glitter can, at this point now, means anything good,
Mm-hmm.
anything helpful, anything beneficial. It's really about giving your child a healthy and fun childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, and allowing them to really discover who they are.
Exactly.
In the process, and our role as parents in that. Like I said, this another kind of spark for this was not just us having these conversations, but we were also having these conversations just around parenting with our friends who also had kids of the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really found that hearing their conversations were super beneficial, and we just wanted to create a space where it's not so much like I guess we can kind of define what we don't want this podcast to be.
Yeah.
One thing this podcast is not us telling you how to parent.
No. We're not parenting experts. We don't claim to be.
No, we don't claim to be. We're not parenting experts. We're going to share a lot of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to share a lot of our personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even some of our strategies with certain things.
Yeah.
But it's never going to be us telling you
Yeah.
how to parent.
Yeah.
We want this to be a lot more of a, like you would do with your friends, where
Yeah,
you
a
just sit
conversation.
down. Exactly. Sit down and have conversations and learn from each other, talk to each other.
Because that's how we've developed a lot of our parenting skills.
Yes.
Is conversations with other parents, talking about, well, how do you handle this way? Or how do you handle conflict? Or how do you manage sibling relationships? Or how do you interact with, a kid that has a parent preference, or any number of topics? And that's how we realize that we and many parents learn best by speaking with other parents, having conversations and relationships with other parents.
And there is certainly a time and place for the like hard and fast, like here's a strategy.
Yeah.
And there's those resources out there. And hopefully as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to, have therapists, child psychologists, other people who have really more than anything like studied it and have some expertise and some real strategies to bring to it. But that's not who we're going to be.
No. This
is like, you're coming to our dinner table, you're coming sitting on our couch, and we're just going to talk about being a parent. And so it's not us telling you how to parent. It's a conversation about parenting.
Right.
So that's what it's not. It's not a, here's how you do it.
Right.
It's also, there's no religious motivation with this. So none of that.
There's also we're not going to promote one style of parenting.
Yes,
like,
correct.
We hope to talk to many people who have all kinds of different parenting styles, and even all of our friends have different parenting styles.
Correct.
So this isn't about you've got to parent your kids this one way.
Yes.
This is just about learning to raise healthy human beings.
Yes. Yeah. Not promoting one style is a big one, because there's, so many things to learn from different styles. And I think that's what makes the conversations that you have with other parents so valuable. Is it's not that everything they're saying is what you're going to apply.
Right.
That's a different perspective that I never thought about, or, I like that specific thing. And so kind of the way I envision it is kind of this being like a parenting buffet.
Yeah.
Where just like a regular buffet, you don't go and get one of everything.
Yeah.
And you don't get a very specific thing off the menu, like a prepared thing. You get to pick and choose, like, oh, I think I'll take a little this, a little this.
Yep.
And so that's kind of what we want to make, is this like parenting buffet of resources for you to be able to just listen, learn, grow, hopefully in the future connect with us and connect with other listeners, and just develop a community. Because another thing this podcast is not, this is not a podcast for toddlers.
No.
We are going to talk about toddlers. We are not in the toddler phase.
No, not currently.
That has kind of sunset for us with our two. But it feels like, and we've talked about this together ad nauseum, how when it comes to parenting resources, what they kind of are is, you've got, here's how to keep your baby alive, which is important.
Yes,
needed.
You do need to keep your baby alive.
That is definitely something you want to do.
Rule number 1 of parenting.
Keep your baby alive.
Yes.
So there's a lot of that. But then there's a lot of, here's how you manage toddlers. Here's how you handle toddlers and temper tantrums. And then it's like,
it skips to teens.
It does, but even with teens, it's like, it's not there's not an abundance of great resources.
No, not that we've seen.
And I think part of that is because by teenage years, parents, they've been doing it for more than a decade, depending on how many teenagers they've had, maybe multiple decades. Yeah. There's a comfort level in being a parent, but then there's also a bit of a, I don't know how to describe it, but this like sense of like, oh, well, it is what it is now.
I've made my bed already, so
yeah,
this is what it's going to be.
You got a major bed, you're laying in it, and they're teenagers,
but
and you just got to deal with it.
It seems like a lot of the teen resources come from, help, my teen is difficult. And it's like, not every teen is difficult or
and not
rebellious or any of
and
that
it doesn't
kind of
have
stuff.
to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah. And so we want to have those conversations, and we want to have conversations both as parents
Mm-hmm.
who experienced an upbringing, because
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately shapes how you parent more
Mm-hmm.
than anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've got to bring our whole selves to the table as well. But then also talking a lot about the adult
Mm-hmm.
parent relationship,
Yeah, the
meaning,
adult parent-child relationship.
yes, you as the child are the adult,
Mm-hmm.
and you have your obviously adult parents.
Yeah.
But that dynamic,
Yeah.
now that is one that I don't feel gets talked about a lot.
No.
It does get talked about a little more, kind of in a joking way, about like, older generations not apologizing for anything and that. But I think it's important to talk about because, one, if you're a parent, you have, if nothing else, a history, but you do have some sort of relational dynamic with your parents as an adult.
Yep.
And so now you're parenting a younger person, you still have your parents. There's that dynamic. And so that shapes how you parent. That
Mm-hmm.
shapes the parent that you are, and trying to navigate that, make those healthy. But then also one day, I feel like millennials especially, we talk a lot about our relationships as adults
Mm-hmm.
with our parents.
Yeah, or lack thereof, or
Lack thereof.
how our raising, our rearing,
Yep.
impacted our life. Because you don't even have, I mean, I have plenty of friends, or a few friends that don't have kids, who still talk a lot about their childhood, or how their parents affected them, or
Yep.
how their current relationship with their parents is great or isn't great, and why that is. And so while the podcast is primarily for parents, there are also going to be, we
Mm-hmm.
hope, a lot of episodes that people without kids can listen to and
Yep.
find funny, find insightful, even humorous.
Healing.
Yeah, can find healing. And so if you don't have kids, just wait. It's not
Stick
only
around.
stick around.
Yeah. And the other side of that too is, if you do have kids,
Mm-hmm.
one day you're going to have adult kids.
Yep.
And so this transitions nicely into a theme
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to hear us talk about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things that we are not going to be as a podcast. One of the things we are going to be, and we are going to talk a lot about, and you will hear us say this a lot, is the idea of parenting with the end in mind.
Right.
Parenting beyond just the moment, beyond the tantrum, beyond the inconvenience,
Or the
beyond the
age.
frustration,
Yeah.
beyond the age. Parenting with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why don't you share a little bit about kind of what we mean by that?
So you're going to, for one, you're going to have a relationship with your adult child much longer than you will your minor child.
Yes.
Like, your kid will be an adult for the majority of
Your relationship with
your
them.
relationship. And so parenting only to survive in toddlerhood, teenagehood, adolescence, like, while important, that's not an end goal mindset. And so we like to talk about, what do we want our kids to be? And not so much in a career or an aspiration, just like, what kind of human do we want them to be?
Yeah.
We want them to be kind, respectful, loving humans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do we get there? Right? Like, we want them to show up that way in the world, no matter what they do or how they orient or whatever, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
How do they show up in the world? And so
Mhm.
that's also part of parenting with the end in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I like what you said there, because that is something we talk a lot about, where you are going to spend most, hopefully you live a long time, your kids
Mhm.
live a long time. If that's the case, you're living into your 70s, 80s, 90s.
Mm-hmm.
You have your kids, even if you have them mid-30s, like most people do, you're going to spend, more decades than not with
Mhm.
adult children.
Yeah.
And so once that happens, they're not at home anymore. You're not shaping them anymore.
Mhm.
They're their own person. You've got to get them ready for adulthood. I feel like there's a lot of sense of like, I've got to get them ready for adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of like really developing them emotionally
Mm-hmm.
with the end in mind, like really quickly, a very practical example of this, something that happened recently, was our youngest, he said something in a way to me that was pretty attitudinal, and there are plenty of parents of older generations that would say, like, I would never let my kid talk to me like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay. But from his context, hadn't been in the world super long.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have all the years and decades of human interaction and practice. And so parenting with the end in mind is not, don't talk to me that way, I'm your parent.
Mm-hmm.
Parenting with the end in mind is saying, hey, that is not the appropriate way to engage with me in a conversation or to
Mm-hmm.
ask me
Mm-hmm.
for something. You can want it, but you don't have to yell at me. You don't have to demand me.
Mm-hmm.
And just teaching them, like, this is a better way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's a skill beyond him being little and wanting something and saying it in frustration. That is something that he has to learn, as does his older brother. Like, no, there's ways you can ask. A good example of that is the whining
Mm-hmm.
with Big Brother.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot lately it's been, you need to express yourself
Mm-hmm.
without whining.
Mm-hmm.
You just use your words rather
Yeah.
than getting mad or throwing something or just whining. Use your words and tell your brother how you feel about it.
Yeah.
That's
Say what you
the
need.
end in mind.
Yeah.
Because that's skill they're going to use with each other as
Exactly.
adults.
That's, you want to teach people who can accurately, or not accurately, but can effectively communicate their feelings and emotions to people in a healthy way, right? Like, yes, we're also, and this is part of what this podcast is about, is like, yes, we absolutely care about parenting in a way that we can have a good relationship with our kids when they're adults, but also like, we just want them to be kind people out in the world. And so like, you shouldn't just vomit your rage onto somebody
Yeah.
just because you're upset or confused about something. Like, there's a healthy way to communicate your emotions, and expecting kids to just know that by default is ridiculous. They don't have enough experience and haven't lived long enough, and maybe don't have the tools. Like, we know that about toddlers with emotional regulation. It's the same thing with, like, hey, here's how you speak to someone. Here's how you speak to someone you care about. Here's how you speak to someone you don't know. And there's 1,000 examples that we can draw on, but
and it's not so much addressing like the moment of whatever the inconvenience may be, whatever the frustration may be. It's more addressing kind of the moment with the end in mind. Like, this
thinking
is just
beyond the moment.
Okay, this is not the best way to try to communicate to your brother by screaming at him, right? Or by, for the older one, by ignoring him, right?
Yeah.
Like, that I had that conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, if you need a break from your brother, tell him, hey, I would like a 10-minute break.
Mm-hmm.
Communicate that to him rather than being rude and ignoring him.
Yes.
Right? That's the piece of where it's like not just addressing, like fixing the issue of the moment, but addressing it in the long term of like, hey, learn how to communicate, learn how to express your feelings, learn how to, talk to your brother, talk to us, those type of things. So kind of a rabbit trail there, but you're going to hear us talk a lot about parenting with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
That is a value kind of we have in our holistic parenting strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like we mentioned, what this is a conversation. We are not experts.
No.
We're just two parents with two boys that want to have a broader conversation with you all and people on the podcast about this wild journey. It is a fucking wild journey.
Yeah, parenting is.
That we are on with parenting. Also, swear words are allowed at this podcast. We're parents, we're adults.
Yeah.
And these kids, man, they are fucking nuts sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes.
But we love them.
Yeah. Sometimes they're assholes.
Sometimes.
And we love them anyway.
So this is real talk.
Yeah.
Real talk here. So yeah, just two parents wanting to have a larger conversation. Another thing that, and you touched on this earlier, but I think it's important to touch on again, because it is a big motivator behind this podcast, but it's promoting that femininity within boys.
Yes. Or promoting femininity as a positive.
Yes.
And not a negative.
Yes. Yeah, because so many people will take, especially in today's world, will take femininity in boys and make that out to be a negative.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, like when it comes to little girls, especially tomboys,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have any issue with her being a tomboy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or her having, liking sports or not being into Barbies and stuff like that. Her not liking dresses, just wanting to wear shirts and T-shirts. Like somehow that's fine, right? Because we live in a society that
rewards masculinity.
Rewards masculinity is run by men.
Yeah.
And so breaking out of that of you have to be this way. This is the mold that fits. It's no. And I think really more than anything, like what that really comes from, like our motivation of promoting the more feminine, if you will, characteristics. But then like we got one of ours does express himself in more feminine ways. The other one doesn't. Mm-hmm. And we don't push that.
They just like you said, who they are.
They are who they are. And I think one of the really key things about parenting is understanding that you are not, you're not trying to, how should I say this? We talk a lot about raising kids. Like, yes, you want to raise them like to be good, to be kind, to be generous. You do want to, and I don't even feel like raising is the right word.
Like guiding.
Yeah, you want to guide them into those. But also
nurturing.
You are really like they are discovering who they are. Mm-hmm. But you also, as the parent, are discovering who they are as a person. And I think personhood is lost a lot on our kids because they are just our kids.
Well, I think a lot of people, especially in previous generations, cared more about replicating themselves.
Yes.
Than just nurturing the kids they were given.
Yes.
Like I know we both have stories from our own childhoods of our parents having expectations that really had nothing to do with who we were as people.
Yes.
And everything to do with who they were as people. Unnecessary expectations.
Yes.
And that's kind of what, that's one of the topics that we'll talk about a lot on this podcast is like, let your kid be who they are. Yes, there's always like a safe and healthy way to be who you are as a person, but let your kid be who they are. Some kids like sports and some kids don't. Some kids like dresses and some kids don't. And that doesn't have to be dependent on their gender identity and all that kind of stuff. Like, just let them be who they are. Let them like what they like. And as long as they're healthy and safe and happy, like, great. Everybody wins.
Yeah, let them discover who they are as a person because they're learning that.
Yeah.
But you are also learning that in real time. And you get the opportunity to, and we have all seen this, you get the opportunity to either resist who they are becoming as a person or foster that.
Yes.
And love that.
And celebrate it.
Celebrate it because they can like what they want to like, have their interest, have their preferences, and that can be on a really large spectrum, right? But it's really instilling in them character, love, kindness, but then fostering an environment where you allow them to discover their personhood.
Yeah.
And a lot of that starts with acknowledging their personhood.
Yeah.
From a really young age.
You have to believe they are their own person.
Yeah.
Even though they're a little person.
They're a little person.
They still have their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own perspective. It may be limited because they haven't been here as long, but they have their own point of view of the world.
Yes.
And you should be curious to find out what that perspective is, who they are, what they like and don't like, and why.
Yeah. And I love that idea of being curious about learning your kids and who they are. because they are learning themselves, but they're also learning their environment and how to move as themselves in their environment. And we get the opportunity as parents to create an environment for them that is safe, that allows them to discover themselves, and then gives them the tools into adulthood to navigate adulthood,
right?
But also be people who are just really good people out in the world and spread
who are secure
love,
in themselves,
kindness. Yeah. So those are the things, some big themes that we're going to unpack and talk about and have conversations with. We're also going to have guests with different perspectives, different parenting perspectives. We got some people lined up coming up that I think are going to be they're going to offer a really unique perspective. And so I think truly, like, as the podcast grows, what I envision and what you envision is it's going to be a lot more guests than us talking. Probably early on, it's going to be a lot of us talking
this
as it
is
grows.
new. This is a new venture.
Yeah. But it's going to grow into really a podcast where we have a lot of guests, we have a lot of conversations, a lot of different perspectives. And I think I really like where I can see that going, and the people we're already working with on getting on. I think it's going to offer some really unique, really cool perspectives there.
Yeah.
And then just to kind of tie all this up of what it is parenting with the end game in mind, and that end game is raising emotionally healthy adults.
Right.
It's not, like you said, raising clones of yourself to think and be exactly like you are as a parent. There's a wide spectrum of how people what they will like, what their preferences will be. Even in our kids, like our oldest, he likes to watch sports with me. Our youngest couldn't give a shit about sports ball.
He's like, give me nail polish, let me watch dancing videos.
Yeah.
Like,
or Disney.
Yeah, Disney
video. And so, like, they're just uniquely who they are, but either way, regardless of what they like, what their personalities are, what their favorite colors are, we want to foster their individuality while raising them to be emotionally healthy adults. Because you mentioned your children are going to spend most of their relationship with you as adults. From their perspective, and we see this now as adults, and you listening can see this as well, you spend a overwhelming majority of your life as an adult, not under your parents. Right. And depending on the household you grew up in, your parents may have been really involved, or on the other end of the spectrum where they weren't so much involved, and you were kind of raising yourself. And so, like, either way, you're going to get launched into adulthood, and that is how you spend most of your life, is as an adult navigating the world. And so when we say emotionally healthy adults, that's because they are going to spend most of their life as adults.
Yeah, and we've all of us have witnessed the fallout of emotionally unhealthy adults at some point. If you've been on social media, you have seen emotionally unhealthy adults.
Doesn't take long to find them. No, because it is learned. It is fostered. And not just emotionally healthy adults that we have to interact with, but then even extend that, like, if you're someone who feels like my parents aren't super emotionally healthy adults, you also know what that's like. And so just trying to create new patterns, have broader conversations, and raise emotionally healthy kids. That's really what we want. A little bit about our story.
Yes.
I feel like it's unique. Very unique. If not, man, hit us up. We would love to meet you.
We have been searching our whole relationship for people remotely similar with a remotely similar background to us, and have not found it yet.
It's like the Phil Collins song, I've been waiting for this moment
for all my life.
So if you are similar to us in story, we would love to meet you. Love to connect.
Yes.
But we got married right out of college, which is unique.
Yes.
We got married right out of college. I was 23.
I was 24.
You were 24. And super young. We were like, let's be married for a few years. Let's just hang out with each other, do fun stuff.
Work, save money, all that.
Yeah. All
ideal stuff.
Travel.
Yep.
So that was the plan.
Yes.
Sleep in.
Yeah. We RIP for all of the sleep we've never gotten. Like, and we'll never get it back.
That was the plan. Surprise, surprise. We had a honeymoon baby.
Yes. We came back from our honeymoon expecting. Unexpectedly expecting.
Yeah. We brought back a souvenir.
Yes.
That would never leave us.
We've got him for the rest of our lives.
And yeah, that was definitely a shock to the system.
Yes.
And so here we are, 23, 24. Like, we've been married at this point 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think we'd been married like 2 weeks when we found out.
And it was a honeymoon baby because we were not living in the same location leading up to the wedding.
We were long distance a couple months before the wedding.
And so we come back, boom. We're like, oh, shit. We're grown now.
Oh, fuck.
And 9 months later.
There he was. We celebrated our first anniversary with a baby.
With a baby. Having to get a babysitter to watch him. And so that kind of just set off this whirlwind of being parents young. I know there's a lot of people who are out there as young parents and people who maybe for whatever circumstances had unplanned pregnancies, and there's a lot of different ways that works out. But yeah, we were very committed to each other. We wanted kids, not that fast, and that just got accelerated. That accelerated a lot of life.
Yes.
From thereafter.
Yep.
A lot of our relationship has felt like trying to catch up.
Yeah, because we were, I mean, while we wanted to be parents one day, we were not ready. We were not prepared, but we were like, we're going to do it anyway.
We got to do it now.
Yeah. And so I think we both were just trying to absorb as much information.
Yeah.
Since then, have been trying to absorb as much information on healthy parenting, health, emotional health, mental health, all that kind of stuff.
And, you know, it did, at least for us personally, accelerate even the idea of like trying for a second.
Yeah.
Which we did because we didn't want there to be too much of an age gap between them.
And we weren't only child people.
Yeah. And so like that was something that happened much sooner. And so now we've got two kids under 30. 2 kids under 30. And the other part of that too is like we find ourselves oftentimes in a lot of social situations where people who have kids of similar age
are much older. Yeah,
they're like a decade older than us. Yes. And all of our peers for the last, 10 years now, like they're just now coming.
They're just now starting. Like, and that's why we say we've never met anyone like us. It's not that we haven't met people who had kids young, but we've never met anyone who, for one, we haven't met anyone with kids our similar age that also share our age.
Yes. 2 kids our kids' age that share our age and, quite frankly, have stayed married through it because there's been some tough shit through it. It's not easy, It definitely wasn't. And I can totally, it's like we had kids young, not because of any sort of ideology or because that's what we wanted, but because that's kind of what life gave us.
Yeah. Like
you said, we wanted kids, not that quickly. We got them that quickly. And so we had to figure it out. And I, on this perspective, can totally see why people wait now.
Yeah.
Because, man, what a different ball game that would have been.
If we were just now having kids or like just now having our second or something, like I can't even imagine.
Oh my goodness. It'd be a
totally different life.
And so we had to grow up fast. grew up real fast with the first and then the second, and a lot of life things that have happened. And, you know, it's not been an easy road. It's not a road that I wouldn't want for anyone. Maybe one day we'll get like a great book deal because the podcast is great and we'll write about it and people will be like, that's amazing. Yeah. Right. And we'll just be like, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. It worked out, but I wouldn't recommend it.
I would not. And then also a significant part of our story is like, when you have kids, it often makes you reflect on your own childhood and your own parents. And so there's been a lot of like healing that we've each individually and together had to do, because we like realized things about our own childhood, our own relationship with our respective parents that were unhealthy, or we felt unsafe, or that could be better. And that's still a journey that we're on. Yeah.
And probably will stay on.
Yeah.
You know, because as time goes on, it brings new phases into the parenting journey, which kind of, you know, is really a big thing we want from this podcast, is that it becomes something that we can bring in a lot of different people from a lot of different phases and walks of life and journeys. You know, we can talk to, you know, a parent who's older or an older couple who have grown kids and a bunch of grandkids, because that's a parenting perspective that we don't have and won't have for a long time, but there's value there. We can talk to a parent who has all adult children. We'll talk to parents who have young kids. We'll talk to parents, you know, who have adopted kids, and
we'd love to talk to parents, single parents, you know, queer couples, queer families.
Yeah. And the more we can listen to people and their perspectives, I think the more well-rounded we become as people and as parents. So that's going to be a big thing, is just bringing in a lot of different perspectives, because, you know, we've got, you know, the preteen years are not that far down the road for us, right? But there's plenty of parents who have been on that journey and who have navigated it well. Yeah. Like, shout out, like, that's another thing. This doesn't want to be, it's not going to be all about like, well, poo-pooing our parents and this is dumb, this parenting strategy. Like, we want to celebrate good parenting.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty of episodes that are really positive, that are encouraging. We want all of it to be encouraging and end on positivity. We don't really want to have like a sad sack, depressing podcast about not being loved enough. Like,
there's plenty of that.
Yeah, there's plenty of that.
I mean, honestly, I think if you're a good parent, you spend most of your time feeling like you're not a good parent.
Like, oh man, I should have done that better. I should have said this differently, or I should have,
And so we just want to be a resource for different perspectives and insight. We also, like you said, want to be an encouragement.
Want to be a
community. And you got this. You're doing it. You're raising kids.
If you are raising kids, and you are raising kids.
You're raising whole humans. You're doing it. You're holding it down. You're getting it done. Way to go.
If they are alive and they know they're loved,
good
job.
You're doing it right there. So shout out to all the parents. You guys are doing it. And we want this to be a positive place where you can learn new things and new perspectives, but also get encouraged. Yeah. And get the tank filled up. Because I've even found too, like, unintentionally, like, you can watch a TikTok or something about this is a way to do it. And like, immediately you're like, oh shit. Like, I totally didn't do that this last time this came up and handled that poorly. And so, like, if you're, like I said, if you're a good parent who's self-reflective, wanting to grow and be better, right, you're going to have a lot of those moments where you're like, and especially young parents like us, and then God bless the firstborns, because they are the guinea pigs.
They're the experimental kid.
They are. And they're wild sometimes because of that. I'm a firstborn. You're a secondborn. Unique perspectives there that are brought to the parenting game. And so yeah, it's just a big conversation to learn and grow, to be encouraged, to feel like, you know what? I'm actually good at this. I'm actually doing this. And just an encouragement for those of you with younger kids, if you're listening to this. And I'm sure those with older kids would say it's just the ages they're at. There are a lot more days now that I feel like, you know what? We're doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I think we are good parents.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And it really happened in the last like year,
Yeah.
really 6 months, where I was like, I don't think I'm failing.
Yes.
That's
the key.
I think I'm doing okay.
Yeah. I'm not failing in
Yeah.
the raising of humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so here's the deal. It is a big responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to be entrusted by the universe with this little person,
Yeah.
and to get to discover them, help them learn themselves, and usher them into adulthood. It is a big responsibility. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably someone who takes that responsibility really seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome. We take it seriously. And I think a lot of millennials and younger people do take it really seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Even shout out to all the millennials who don't have kids, haven't had kids,
Yep.
don't want to yet, because we have friends like that who don't have kids, and they understand the serious
It's
nature.
a serious and intentional choice.
And they're like, I'm not in a position right
Mm-hmm.
now where I either can or want to
Mm-hmm.
take that on. That is actually really wise.
Yes. So just know this is a parenting podcast where we also respect people's choice not to have kids.
Yes. And because you understand the gravity of what it means to try to raise someone
A
well,
person, yeah.
raise a person well. Many of us, I'm not saying us personally, many of us listening have grown up in homes where maybe parents didn't take that responsibility
Mm-hmm.
with the emotional seriousness that it needed. They had
Mhm.
kids because that's what you did, or because just was the stage of life, rather than the saying like, okay, I now have the responsibility
Mm-hmm.
of discovering and developing this little
Person.
baby
Yeah.
into adulthood.
Yeah.
And it is so fucking hard.
It's a lot of work that you don't get paid for, that you have to pay for.
Yeah. That you don't get paid for, but you have to pay for.
Yeah.
A lot of thankless, a lot of tired.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when your intention is to do it well, there is a lot of fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of benefit. Like, we're even seeing that now with our oldest, like
Mm-hmm.
entering into new phases of, preteen and everything. And the trust, the rapport, the conversations that we get to have, like, I think that's really, we're saying we feel like we're doing it better now. A lot of the things we've talked about and kind of the vision we had of, being parents that our kids could approach,
Mm-hmm.
like, we're beginning to see that happen
Yeah.
at ages where that stuff tends to start to drift.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you are a parent who wants to do this well, whether your kids are young or your kids are older, first of all, there's never a bad time to start doing it well.
Yeah.
Never a bad time. Today is the best day to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And second, when you really make it intentional, you're going to see the benefit
Yeah.
of that. And
Mhm.
man, that is so sweet to get to see that. We experience now with our younger kids in different ways, and it's sweet that way. There's still a lot of hard because they're little, and there's going to be different hard when they're older, but
yeah.
you see it now and you feel it now. And that's those things you've been nurturing and watering and
Seeds
trying
you've
to,
been planting.
yes, you
Yeah.
start to see them sprout and
Mhm.
take life. And that's a beautiful thing. But then you also see it in other relationships where you see parents who
Mhm.
have older kids and they have a beautiful relationship, and you're like, it can be done.
Yes, it can work.
It can work.
There
And when
can
it
be
does
happy
work,
families.
it's beautiful.
Yes.
And so we're trying to build beautiful, happy, kind, loving, safe families. We're trying to build that in our own family. We want to foster that in these conversations that we have. And if you're listening to this, you probably want to do that in your family as well. So we are super excited to have you here. Just to wrap it up, a few ways that you can connect with us. You can follow us on Instagram,
Mhm.
on TikTok, on YouTube. You want to give those handles for us?
Yep. So everything for Give Them Glitter is going to be at Give Them Glitter.
Yes.
And then if you want to follow us individually, we're both on Instagram.
Yes.
Yours is
Joshua A. Houston.
Mm-hmm. And mine is Her Written Style.
Yes. We would love to connect.
Yep.
We would love to hear episodes you'd like to have, guests that you would like to have, make any connections to get guests on here. We would love to connect with you guys. This is not us just sitting back and talking at you.
Yeah.
We want to build a community. We want to do this together.
Mm-hmm.
We want to learn from each other and have great conversations. And so Give Them Glitter at TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. That's where you'll find it. Liking, subscribing, following, all of that's free.
Mm-hmm.
So do that. We'd love to connect. And then neither one of us, side note, are on TikTok. It's only the Give Them Glitter,
Right.
along with YouTube. But on Instagram, you will be able to find both of our profiles at the Give Them Glitter page as well. So we would love to connect. We'd love to get to know you. We'd love to hear from you and conversations that you would like to have and like to see on the podcast. This is a table that you're welcome to. This is a living room that we're inviting you into joining us, because this is a hell of a journey.
Yes.
And we need a community, and we need to learn from each other to do it well. So anything else?
Nothing else.
Look at that. We did it.
We did it. Look at us.
The first, hopefully, of many, many podcasts. If you have hung out this long, thank you so much for joining us. We're so grateful for you. We hope to connect with you on social media. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a follow. We can connect. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.